You guys now, 25 or 26?
18. I'm more than 69.
But less than 70.
I'm willing to admit to 69. That's
I'm 30 something. I'm 30, 45. Add those up. Anyway, on a more somber note, first of all, I'd like to introduce you all to Paul's wife. She's been very strong through very trying time. Some of us have been there to assist her, but in fact she's really strong and doing very well, and some of us will remain in contact to help her through times. So say hello to Tony.
Hi, Tony.
Thank you all for coming.
I'm honored to have been asked to say a few words about Paul. The fact is, there's so many words that I can say, I'm not sure I would lose my composure doing so, so I'm going to keep my comments brief. Paul was, for many, many years, he shared his wisdom, his knowledge, his building and flying skills, and to me, most importantly, his friendship. I learned a lot from Paul, and I'm going to miss him dearly. So, I know there are many of you have already expressed your thoughts about Paul in the emails that you sent back to the group, and I've read them. I'm planning to share those with Tony so she gets an idea what many of you felt about Paul. And I look around and I see some new faces, and in a way I'm very sad that some of our new members never got to know Paul. Just a super swell guy and a very dear friend of mine. In terms of knowing more about Paul, I can't think of anybody that would have known Paul longer or better than Bob Blonsky, which is why I've asked and he's agreed to spend a few moments telling us some things that maybe we never knew about Paul. Bob?
Well, I met Paul probably in the late 60s, early 70s. Paul worked for Western Electric and I worked for Southern New England Tel. Paul was an installer. He put the equipment into our buildings, wired them up, and then I maintained them and used them. Now, even back then, his craftsmanship showed. He would sit on a ladder, cutting down wires all day with a cut sheet with probably 1,000 pairs on it, color-coded, and blocks. Now, the blocks were soldered on the bottom by him and on the top by me. And then he had to dress them back. He had to tie them with a wax cord. Everything had to be perfectly neat, because at that time we expected everything to last 20 years. Not like today, 20 minutes.
That looks a lot like the wiring in some of his airplanes.
Yeah.
Nicely tied out.
Well, anyway, he worked more down in the Bridgeport, Fairfield area. I worked up in the Danbury area. And he flew with the club down on the shore, down in Bridgeport. And of course, I flew with the club up here. But once he joined FLYRC, then we flew together all the time. And his craftsmanship and stuff on the airplanes is unbelievable, as you've seen. We would call each other in the morning, and I miss this. The first words were, "What's the plan today?" Okay. And we'd look out. If it was really nice, we'd go over to Larry's, fly off the water. Paul loved flying off the water. He'd have his batteries charged. He'd be the first one in. Pretty soon we included Bob. Then it was Bob, Larry, and I, and some of the other guys came over once in a while. And after flying, we'd go to pizza on Tuesdays. Then that became a regular thing. Paul and I would go to pizza. Tuesday was like reserved for pizza. He had to have his pizza. And in the last few months, he would say to me, "That's the highlight of my week." He says, "I gotta go to pizza with you guys." And we'd sit around and shoot the bull, Bob, myself, Paul, you know, about planes and whatever. then we'd go up to the field here. And he just had a way of teaching you to fly. Even us old timers that were kind of losing it, he could, in a pleasant way, make you do stuff where other people would piss you off if they said the same thing. We're gonna miss Paul. I know Bob and I, and especially his wife. But he was the type of guy, he built a Super Connie for Ken just for nothing. I mean, he just did it. Ken supplied the parts. How many of you guys would even build one for yourself?
That was a third scale.
Yeah, never mind building a whole plane like that for somebody else. That's just the type of guy he was. If you asked him to do something, he'd do it.
My only regret about that is that the plane never flew.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, don't
Yeah.
you want to see this thing fly finally?
That's a story where Paul, it was a 4-engine DLE-20 plane. Paul took all the time to sync the engines and get everything right. Gets it down to Kenny, tells him, don't fool with these engines. Okay, first thing Kenny does is mess with the engines. After that, it never got off the ground. As far as I know to this day, it didn't.
I spoke to him recently. It's still not. It still hasn't flown.
Wow.
Anyhow, once again, I'm sorry all you guys didn't know Paul, but he was a good guy.
Thank you, Bob.
Thanks, Bo.
Thank you.
You know, Paul and I met at the phone company. Did he ever tell you that?
No, he didn't tell me that.
He was working in Danbury for a while, installing,
Right.
and I was an operator on West Street.
Oh yeah?
And I was in charge of, because we had a security door that you had to look at the camera and you had a number or something or other. And I was in charge of letting people in and out of the
The front
building.
door, because that's where I worked mostly on
So
West
that's,
Street. What year was this?
70s and 71.
Yeah, I was there with the old cord board upstairs.
Yeah, that was me, the cord board.
Yeah,
And, then they changed to the
What
other
a
thing.
job
I
that
hated it.
was. We had this cord board with all these operators. The good thing was they had a cafeteria and stuff for the operators. But they had these headsets they wore, and we had to clean them. Makeup, cake, stuff on them. Oh, what a job that was. And we didn't have an ultrasonic cleaner or something. It was all spray it and clean it. And then we would bring them up and they would exchange them, give us more dirty ones. That was a job.
Small world, isn't it?
Yeah.
I just found out that Tony and I worked at Duracell together.
Oh, is that right? Wow.
Yes, I think I remember your name. I said, oh shit, you heard it in the halls.
So I'll say a
Couple
couple
other
of
things.
words too.
What's that?
I'll say a couple of words.
Would you like to?
Only two.
Just two, yeah.
Yeah.
So Paul taught me how to fly, and that was after Manganaro discharged me as a student. He thought I was unteachable. So
You're almost right.
Probably true. Probably turned out to be true. But he turned me over to Paul, and Paul had a sort of a quiet humor about him. He was prideful, but not loud and arrogant about it. He knew who he was, and he was confident, and he exuded that confidence in a very quiet and almost humble way. So I finished my program of training, and I magnanimously said, I'm going to take you out to lunch. And he said, yeah, well, what do you mean? I said, well, we're going to go for Chinese food. I'm going to buy you dinner. We were both here about 4:30 in the afternoon. So I said, let's go to that new Chinese restaurant in Southbury. He said, okay. So we get in the car, and I get to the restaurant. I put my hand in my pocket, and I didn't have my wallet. And I said, I don't have any money. And he just looked at me, a little wry smile came over his face, and he said, okay, that's fine. And he just took it in stride. Nothing loud, no mocking, no nothing. He was just very kind and generous to a fault to the very end.
You know, Ken, I remember talking to your wife, and she said you pulled that same thing when you took her on a date.
Yeah, well, that was our first date. Just the first date.
You made up for it
I
later.
learned after that. Yeah.
Well, there's
But,
a couple of things.
He was
I'm
a
sorry,
wonderful
Ken,
guy. No, he made my experience here from the very first day. No question about it.
A couple of points on behalf of Bill, our president, who couldn't be here today. He asked me to share with you some of the plans that the executive group in our club have decided to do. The first is, and it was a suggestion actually by Tony, that contribution be made to the educational fund at the AMA. So we will be making that contribution initially with club funds, and Bill's trying to set it up so that any of us individually who want to contribute can do so directly to the AMA, if not to the club.
Bob, can I add to that?
Sure.
Yeah, I talked to him this morning, and the AMA will set up a scholarship fund in Paul's name, and club members can donate to the AMA.
Good, that's
into
done.
that
Yeah.
fund.
He was trying hard for the past couple of weeks, I know. And
well, the guy left that was doing it and went to a higher paying job.